Well, Todd, thanks for joining me. You're up in Raleigh-Durham area, and I'm down here in Delray, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's great to join you today.
Always. And you and I go back almost 30 years, but let me introduce you to our audience as if the audience doesn't know who you are already. But you are a partner at Revival Healthcare, right? And also you are the chairman of Advamed Excel, and we're going to talk about a little bit about both of those today. But take the audience through a little bit of your background, because you've got a storied background and certainly have touched on all the meaningful technologies in medtech today.
Well, thank you, Joe. Yeah, we've been together in this industry since the late 80s. So not many of us have seen so much change and advancement. But my really career has been in three different parts. You know, my first 15 years was really large cap med tech. I was fortunate enough to start with J&J, one of the first hires at Ethicon Endosurgery. So I was really able to be a part of ushering in that minimally invasive surgery revolution that still has a big thumbprint on the industry. So really enjoyed that. Moved over to more catheter-based technologies after quite a few years with J&J at Boston Scientific, both in cardiac and peripheral vascular. And then I got recruited back to J&J to be the CEO of Cordis. And then we had three business units: cardiovascular, peripheral vascular, and neurovascular, which that stroke and is, both ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke has become such a big area and such a big impact on patients. Kind of part two of my career was more entrepreneurial. I left J&J. I saw a procedure in robotics about 15 years ago and thought, wow, that is amazing. I think that's going to be the future. I was told by everyone around me it was just a prostate application and probably no more, but it's been a great ride to see robotics, develop over the years. I was able to start a company there and get it funded and take it all the way to being public on the New York Stock Exchange. And that was a great ride and very gratifying. And then lastly, about 4 years ago, I really decided to get on the private equity side. I found as an operator and being a CEO the last 20 years, some of the most meaningful guidance the companies that I were running received were from people that were on our board or investors that had been operators. And they had sat in the seat, they had had successes and some challenges, and were really able to give me and the company great guidance. And I felt like a private equity fund, kind of grounded with that operational experience would be unique and different. So that's what I'm doing now at Revival Healthcare Capital.
And I'm excited, this is one of those funding mechanisms that's come around into medtech. It's been sort of on the biotech side, a build to buy strategy, if you will, for a number of years. But Revival is one of the early ushering that in. Orchestra Bio is another one that's pretty active. But Revival, when you and I chatted, you talked about operator led. When you and I grew up in medtech in the late 80s, early 90s, most of your investors were the people who had literally started organizations up in their garage. And then they were successful, and then they became board members. And a lot of VC today never had any operations experience. They come out of all the great B schools or their finance background, but they haven't navigated a reg issue, a clinical issue, a supply chain issue, like boots on the ground. Why is that so different in your opinion?
Well, you're setting it up well, Joe. And look, there's value in those purely financial investors. They provide so much great perspective, and they're an important part of it. But when you have an investor and then a board member that has lived through those things, just as you said, multidisciplinary. They've gone to MHLW in Japan for regulatory review. They've dealt with supply chain issues. They understand the different notified bodies and what the MDR dynamics in Europe are. They have a large Rolodex of commercial expertise and able to know people like you in the industry that really understand the dynamics. I think those people are so much more valuable in the success metrics of the company. Instead of showing up for 4 board meetings a year and maybe having some standard questions after looking at the deck, they have lived in these situations, and to be able to work with you kind of on a regular basis to say, this is how I handled it. let me provide you some perspective and let me open up my Rolodex to you. I think that makes all the difference in the world. And we, as you said, we didn't invent this strategy. Biotech and pharma have done it quite well. Back in 2018, we did a white paper at Advamed and said, with the consolidation of the strategics and fewer VCs investing in medtech, what are some alternative ways that we could look at, funding this innovation that's needed in medtech? And certainly borrowing some of those business models was one that we highlighted back then.
Yeah, and I think it's much needed right now with some of the lack of courage from some of the venture community, and certainly the strategics have pulled back, but I'm seeing them now at the end of 23 get more active. I'm super pumped about some of the moves J&J's made over the last couple weeks, in fact, with dry powder. So you mentioned Advamed. I want to slide into Advamed because you are the chairman of Advamed Excel. And we've got Advamed proper, which historically has been those big, large strategics. And then a couple of years ago, we started sort of an experiment. And let's bring in 100 million and below in sales, and also some of the service providers. So flesh that out for the audience.
Yeah, Joe, you set it up well. The ecosystem of medtech companies are overly weighted to emerging, younger companies. So we kind of bifurcated at Advamed and said we're going to have 100 million in revenue per annum and up, kind of proper Advamed. But we created Advamed Excel for all those companies, 100 million and less in revenue, and the vast majority of those are pre-revenue. They're there getting started up, seed companies looking at SBIR grants, Series A, Series B, just getting going with their commercial funding round. And that is a very large universe of medtech. And we have found that we have a disproportionate number of members at Advamed in that 100 million and below. And those are the companies that need these type of resources. They want to understand what they should think about in a pre-sub meeting preparation of the FDA. They want to know, should they get a distributor in Eastern Europe when they're thinking about their product? Where is first in man, best suited? Should they bring a strategic on their cap table early on? These are real world, questions that we as a large organization with a lot of resources have really helped these younger companies out, and that membership is just flourishing.
Yeah. And the MedTech conference that's coming up in Anaheim in a couple of weeks, you have an investor forum there in particular. So you're starting to connect these emerging tech who are looking for funding or partnering, and also investors coming in. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, when we started with the investor forum a year or two ago, I think we got stronger response than we were anticipating. I think the industry is looking for one gathering place. We have lots of banker-led conferences that we all go to. We have a lot of industry associations, depending on cardiovascular, general surgery, so on. But are there one place where the companies can go? They won't be cloistered away in a hotel suite for the week. They'll actually be on the floor, on the podium, very approachable. Not a lot of separate events at night, everyone at one event. So you really can coalesce strategics, meaning the larger companies, a lot of these young emerging companies, VC, private equity, US, international. And last year, the attendance was overwhelming. This year, we think we're going to be pushing 3,500 and higher. And we really see it becoming the preeminent meeting annually for MedTech, no doubt, because of some of those dynamics that I just mentioned. We're really excited about the way the last few years have gone and the way this year's framing up.
And what's amazing about the Advamed organization at large is you've got the payers there, you've got the investors there, you've got the strategics there, you got the FDA there. Gosh, and you're talking about a concentration. You're not talking about Kevin Lobo or Jeff or Masalam back when he was playing. Like, they're walking the floor. It's not going to a TCT or a PCR or an AHA, and they're sort of dropping in and dropping out. The CEOs of the mid caps and larges are the ones who are actually putting on the show, so they care how this turns out more than any other event, I think, in the industry.
Yeah, it's very well described by you, Joe, and you've been an integral part of the industry, and you've seen these meetings some falter and some really flourish. And I think what you highlighted is one of the reasons we get such good feedback. The CEOs are the one creating the agenda. The CEOs are the ones doing the CEO unplugged. They're the ones that are now doing reverse pitches. Let us, as the CEO of a large company, pitch the audience on why we're open for business for unique business models, what we're focusing on our strat plan, the areas of white space we want to explore. Totally different dynamic. And I can't tell you, every year I go, people, tell me like, wow, there's the CEO of J&J and Medtronic and Stryker and Edwards and on and on and on. They're all day, every day, very approachable, very much willing to sit down, make introductions, and many of good business successes have been launched at these medtech, conferences lately with Advamed. So the approachability, the real involvement of the CEOs to create the agenda, I think has been a big difference maker.
Yeah, and I'll say it, you won't, but this is, look, JP Morgan's a great event, but it's not a medtech centric event. Advamed has turned into a medtech centric event for sure. They both have their place in the industry, but if you're in medtech, large corporate, small player just coming out of the gate, if this is your first time, this is a boot camp for you. Your VC should make sure you're there. And every year something new happens at the Advamed MedTech conference that you, if not before, you wouldn't catch it anywhere else. So Todd, I appreciate your time today, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. We appreciate being with you.
And I'll see you in a couple weeks out in Anaheim.
Very good. Thank you.
You got it. I'm Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Be well.